Hi everyone, I'm just looking today at the Empire of Tartaria, and a lot of people seem to be looking at this subject lately with the mud flood theory and the hidden history. I do believe that there's something weird about these photos of buildings, and it's possible we have had a reset in the past. If indeed there was an empire that was advanced technologically, there is plenty of evidence in that with the buildings and the abilities with sculpting and that people had in the past that are said to be done with primitive tools and minimal workforce compared to today's population. It didn't belong to this Tartarian Empire, and I think it's being usurped into a group of people who today are trying to make themselves appear to be far more advanced than the rest of our civilizations. But they tend to look at this Tartar Empire as some kind of advanced civilization, and that they had all this technology. But I'm starting to think that this Tartar story is nothing more than, as I was indicating in my last video, that it appears to be the rise of the Khazarian Empire along the old Silk Road, which is rising again like a phoenix from the fire, to the new Belt and Road. And along this Belt and Road, all these ghost cities, Central Asian occult cities, the war in Ukraine that I showed in the video from another BitChute channel, that there's documents stating that they want to have a return of the Khazars back to their original capital, which was Kiev in the Ukraine. I believe the Tartar Empire was the Turkic Khazarian Empire, and that's not particularly something I want to return to. They were forefront of the slave trade, trading Slavic people as human merchandise on the Silk Road. It says the Tartars. Old Turkic is an umbrella term for different Turkic ethnic groups bearing the name Tartar. The ethnonym Tartar possibly referred to the Tartar Confederation. So this is a confederation of Turkic people. It's, as I said, the Turkic people started in the Altai Mountains, and I believe they were the family of Japheth, the son of Noah. So his son was Magog, and his sons were Meshech and Tubal, Prince of Rosh. So they were up near Russia, not necessarily Russian, as the northern Russians were the Scandinavian people and the Finnish people. I guess they intermarried with some of these Turkic tribes, of course, as people do. But mainly across Central Asia, Mongolia, Kazakhstan, all of these nations were Turkic origin, and those people initially spread out across that region as the son of Japheth, Magog, moved and his people and tribes grew. So Magog, which means covering, roof, or dissolving, is listed as the second of the seven sons of Japheth by the Bible. His people dwelt in the north. All of its combatants were horsemen equipped with the bow as their weapon. He was the direct ancestor of the Magogonites. Their name was identified with terror and brutality in the east. And I just want to read a little verse from Revelation 9. So in verse 11, and they had a king over them, the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in Hebrew is Abaddon, but in Greek he has the name Apollyon. So in Greek, the name Apollo means destroyer. Apollo is a boy's name pronounced Apollo. It is of Greek origin, and the meaning of Apollo is destroyer. The name from Apollyon, Greek translation of the Hebrew word Abaddon, meaning destroyer. So I just want to remind everybody that in the time of Jesus, or the time of the Roman Jerusalem, or Israel, Palestine, Judea, the people had been Hellenized for, a few hundred years. And so they weren't really Roman. They hated the Romans. They were more Greek in thought. It says the conquest by Alexander the Great in 332 BCE ushered in the Hellenistic period, which would last until the Maccabean revolt in 167 BCE. Hellenistic Jerusalem was characterized by a growing gap between the Hellenized elites who adopted Greek culture and the city's observant population, a gap that would eventually lead to the Maccabean revolt. For most of the Hellenistic period, however, Jerusalem was quite prosperous. So even though the Maccabean revolt happened, there were still some of the Maccabeans who were Hellenized and chose to follow this Greek line of thought and of philosophy. And so the Bible is written in Greek, Aramaic, and Hebrew. People still had this Hellenistic cultural mindset that they understood things. So they were using words that people understood, just as today we might use euphemisms that, they might not be according to our religious belief, but people understand them. For example, we might use a meme to get our point across, and people understand it in today's context. So I'm just going to look into this story, which is from the Greek mythology about Hyperborea. For the mythologically inclined, this is quite an interesting story. Hyperborea, an island behind the north wind, is the home of Apollo's mother, and its inhabitants are connected to Athenians. Apollo himself visited the island every 19 years. Other sources say that Hyperboreans sent gifts to Apollo's temple at Delos. These gifts seem to have been amber. Its yellow color made it sacred to the sun god Apollo. Apollo was the sun god. He was the son of Zeus, and he was the destroyer. And that might be more appropriate for today than we actually realize if we look at the electric universe hypothesis. It says, I think it might be worth quoting Diodorus Siculus' passage about Hyperborea. So this is what he said. Now for our part, since we have seen fit to make mention of the regions of Asia, which lie to the north, we feel that it will not be foreign to our purpose to discuss the legendary accounts of the Hyperboreans. Of those who have written about the ancient myths, Hecatus and certain others say that in the regions beyond the land of the Celts, there lies in the ocean an island no smaller than Sicily. This island, the account continues, is situated in the north and is inhabited by the Hyperboreans, who are called by the name because their home is beyond the point where the north wind, Boreas, blows. And the island is both fertile and productive of every crop, and since it has unusually temperate climate, it produces 2 harvests each year. Moreover, the following legend is told concerning it. Leto was born on this island, and for that reason Apollo is honored among them above all other gods, and the inhabitants are looked upon as priests of Apollo. Daily they praise God continuously in song and honor him exceedingly. And there is also on the island both a magnificent sacred precinct of Apollo and a notable temple which is adorned with many votive offerings and is spherical in shape. Furthermore, a city is there which is sacred to this god, and the majority of the inhabitants are players on the cithara, and these continually play on this instrument in the temple and singing hymns and praise to the god, glorifying his deeds. It kind of reminds me of the city of God in Revelation. A cithara is a harp, and Revelation 4 verse 8, each of the 4 living creatures had 6 wings and was covered with eyes all around, even under its wings. Day and night they never stopped saying, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty, who was and is to come. Diodorus Siculus, or Diodorus of Sicily, was an ancient Greek historian. He is known for writing the monumental universal history Bibliotheca Historica. In 40 books, 15 of which survive intact between 60 and 30 BC. The history is arranged in 3 parts. So the first covers mythic history. It might be interesting to look into this person and see if there's any anomalies with these dates of his being from the era of the 1st century BC. The Hyperboreans also have a language, we are informed, which is particular to them and are most friendly disposed towards the Greeks and especially towards the Athenians and the Delians, who have inherited this goodwill from most ancient times. The myth also relates that certain Greeks visited the Hyperboreans and left behind them their costly votive offerings bearing inscriptions in Greek letters, and in the same way Arborus, a Hyperborean, came to Greece in ancient times and renewed the goodwill and kinship of his people to the Delians. They say also that the moon, as viewed from this island, appears to be but a little distance from the earth and to have upon it prominences like those of the earth, which are visible to the naked eye. The account is also given that the god visits the island every 19 years, and the period in which the return of the stars to the same place in the heavens is accomplished. And for this reason, the 19-year period is called by the Greeks the year of Meton. At the time of this appearance of the god, he both plays on the cithara and dances continuously the night through, from vernal equinox until the rising of the Pleiades, expressing in this manner his delight in his successors. And the kings of the city and the supervisors of the sacred precinct are called Boredeus, since they are descendants of Boreas, and the succession to these positions is always kept in their family. So the Hyperborean North Pole is prominent in the flat earth teaching, also in the mud flood and hidden history community. And it appears that in the North Pole we have this mountain, Mount Meru. So then we have Tartarus. Tartarus was the great pit beneath the earth in the oldest of the Greek cosmologies. The universe was envisaged as a great sphere or egg-shaped void, with the solid dome of the sky forming the upper half of the inverse dome of the pit of Tartarus, the lower. The flat horizontal disk of the earth divided the interior of the cosmic sphere into 2 halves, the homes of men and gods above, and the gloomy storm-racked prison of the Tartanes below. So in Greek mythology, Tartarus is the deep abyss that is used as a dungeon of torment and suffering for the wicked and the prison for the Titans. Tartarus is a place where, according to Plato's Gorgias, souls are judged after death, where the wicked receive divine punishment. Tartarus is also considered to be a primordial force or deity alongside entities such as the earth, night, and time. As for the place, Hesiod asserts that a bronze anvil falling from heaven would fall 9 days before it reached the earth. The anvil would take 9 more days to fall from earth to Tartarus. In the Iliad, Zeus asserts that Tartarus is as far beneath Hades as heaven is above earth. Similarly, the mythographer Apollodorus describes Tartarus as a gloomy place in Hades, as far distant from earth as earth is distant from sky. In Isaiah 19 verse 24, it says, "In that day Israel will be one of 3 with Egypt and Assyria, a blessing in the midst of the land, whom the Lord of hosts shall bless, saying, Blessed is Egypt my people, Assyria the work of my hands, and Israel my inheritance." If Satan drew a third of the angels of heaven in Revelation, relating to this last third, Israel, my inheritance, because Assyria and Egypt had already been banished from heaven, then what's the furthest place from heaven that, if we look at this in a realistic context and not a mythological one, the furthest place from the known world, the known civilization. And I'm going to suggest that it's this kingdom of Tartaria. If we look at the archaeology of this region, there's not much there. There's no buildings there. China built a wall to keep them out. This Tartarian Empire was a group of nomads that lived in tents on wagons, and they moved about. They were the Scythians, they were the Mongolians, they were the Turkic tribes of Central Asia. And if we look at Central Asia, there really isn't much architecture there except for along the Silk Road where they had places for the caravans to stay. We have a temple in Uzbekistan which doesn't look that old or complicated as far as the building is concerned. Most of the ancient architecture in this region looks like this along the Central Asian Silk Road. We have more of this sort of Byzantine kind of architecture in the Ukraine, and these ones are from Russia. But if we look at the actual Tartarian Empire, I just want to ask the question, where's all this beautiful architecture in this region? All of the beautiful architecture is in Europe, northern Russia, the Ukrainian area, but this steep country where this Tartaria is, there is absolutely nothing. And so I want to know why this empire built all of these beautiful buildings with technologies that we have now forgotten or have been hidden from us, but they didn't build it in their own empire. Why did they build it all in Europe and in the nations that were where the main part of civilization was? It says the Great Wall helped to keep the Tartars and other barbarian tribes out of China for many years. After the Mongolian dynasty of China, Yuan, had been wiped out in 1368 AD, and I'm not going on timelines here, but this is just what they're saying, the Ming dynasty used the wall as a means to keep the Tartars and other wandering tribes from trying to come back to reclaim China. So these were tribes, nomadic barbarian tribes, and it wasn't the Mongols or the Tartars that built the wall, it was who was occupying China at the time who built the wall. So Tartarus is a realm of punishment. Like Mother Earth Gaia and Father Sky Uranus, Tartarus came into existence from the void of chaos. It was not only a primordial force, but also a deep abyss located far below Hades. In Greek mythology, Boreas, the north wind, lived in Thrace. The Greeks thought that Hyperboreans, a mythical people, lived far to the north of Thrace, and that therefore Hyperborea was an unspecified region in the northern lands that lay beyond the north wind. Their land, called Hyperborea beyond the Boreas, was perfect, with the sun shining 24 hours a day. Among the Olympian gods, Apollo was venerated by the Hyperboreans. The Greeks believed that the god of light spent his winter amongst them. In Hyperborea, the sun was supposed to rise and set only once a year, which would place it above or upon the Arctic Circle, or more generally in the Arctic polar regions. In maps based on reference points, the description given by Strabo, Hyperborea is shown variously as a peninsula or island is located beyond France and has a greater latitude than longitude extent. Opposed to Hyperborea, we have Tartarus, represented the underworld and place where darkness prevails. There is no light in the underworld, and people's souls can't escape the judgment they have come to face. Tartarus belongs to one of the first deities ever born. After the creation of cosmos, some of the early works of Greek writers indicate that Tartarus was the third deity ever created in cosmos, right after the birth of Gaia and chaos. Many myths talk about the position or place where Tartarus rules and explain it as a place so far away that a bronze anvil would have to fall from heaven for 9 days to get to Earth and 9 more days to reach Tartarus. Other stories indicate that Tartarus was an empty place, since there were some inhabitants who lived there permanently. And I just want to bring to light that this is Greek mythology, and we know that stories get romanticized and exaggerated when it comes to mythology. But what I'm implying here is that this story started from somewhere and that it was possibly a real place. In Genesis 4, verse 16. It says, Then Cain went out from the presence of the Lord and dwelt in the land of Nod on the east of Eden. Okay, so the land of Nod, east of Eden, so east of civilization, east of the source of light of God. And Cain was banished to this place of a wilderness. He was banished to a wilderness, or a place that was removed from the source of creation. So in the Bible, we have this vision of hell that is eternal separation from God, and God is the light and love. Jesus is light. The Bible is clear that there are two possible destinations for every human soul following physical death, heaven or hell. In 2 Thessalonians, he will punish those who do not know God and do not obey the gospel of our Lord Jesus. They will be punished with everlasting destruction and shut out from the presence of the Lord and from the glory of his might. I don't like to push the physical torture of hell scenario. I think it's just cut off from God, cut off from the light. 1 John 1 verse 5. This is the message we have heard from him and proclaim to you, that God is light and in him is no darkness at all. Perhaps this Tartarian mythology from the Greeks originated in the land of Nod, a place of banishment. In the New Testament, Jesus calls the Pharisees serpent seed, the Pharisees and the Sadducees. But when John the Baptist, saw many of the Pharisees and Sadducees come to his baptism, he said unto them, O generation of vipers, who hath warned you to flee from the wrath to come? Is Tartarus a reference to a place that is removed from God, that is a group of people who are not of the family of God? We've got the serpent seed, we have the inheritors of the kingdom, and perhaps Nod, the land of Nod, being east of Eden. The Asian steppes are the east of the Middle Eastern towns and civilizations that were considered part of the kingdoms of heaven, the three parts of heaven. Jerusalem being the kingdom of heaven, and the priesthood being close to God, and then removing and being separated from God in this place where there is no light. So when we see these steep cultures, we don't see any evidence of a brilliant Tartarian empire. There's no architecture, there's no technologies, and although it looks like a pretty free lifestyle, and nothing against these people, I'm just trying to show that there is no Tartarian empire that exists outside of all the old European cities. And if Tartaria was the source of the creation of these beautiful buildings and architecture, why isn't it in their own region first before they move out into the cities of Europe? The closest we get to a civilization that represents the Tartarian, inverted commas, empire is in Turkey, and the Ottoman Empire took that from the Byzantine Empire, and possibly the Ukraine and the regions around where the Turkic tribal areas meet the European areas, for example, Russia and the Ukraine, and getting closer to the Western culture. So if Hyperborea is a place where the sun permanently shines, and Tartarus is a place where the sun never shines, it's a place that's removed from the light. And I believe it's a place where possibly this dragon was banished, where this Gog Magog were banished in a time that was the 1,000-year reign of Christ. In the 1,000-year reign, we have a civilization living unhindered, not deceived by these dragon people, dragon lines, and We have Christ ruling as king, king of kings. Was this architecture built in a time of enlightenment when people were given the ability to understand how to build, how science and how elements work? I mean, did a steppe culture build this building? Because there is zero evidence of this kind of architecture on the steppes of Central Asia. Khazaria, formerly the Khaganate of Khazaria, is a federated sovereign transcontinental state spanning territory in Eastern Europe, Northern and Central Asia. It is the 7th largest country in the world by area. It spans 5 time zones and borders 9 different countries. Its population is over 160 million people, in the 9th largest in the world. Due to its mixed Jewish Turkic culture, it is considered both the largest Jewish and Turkic country in the world. Its capital is Atil, while its largest city is New Jerusalem, having acquired religious significance to the countless Jews fleeing persecution in Western Europe. The state has sometimes been referred to as the New Israel. Khazars were a semi-nomadic Turkic people that in the late 6th century CE established a major commercial empire covering the southeastern section of modern Europe, Russia, southern Ukraine, Crimea and Kazakhstan. They created what for the duration was the most powerful polity to emerge from the breakup of the Western Turkic Khaganate. Astride a major artery of commerce between Eastern Europe and Southwestern Asia, Khazaria became one of the foremost trading empires of the early medieval world, commanding the western marches of the Silk Road and playing a key commercial role as a crossroad between China, the Middle East, and then Kievan Rus. Khazars adopted Judaism under Khagan Bulam, founder of the Bulanid dynasty, which ruled the first Khaganate. His son Ariel I, dubbed the Lion due to his name and character, would go on to centralize Khaganate and spread Judaism among the population more vigorously. Khazar historians argue that Ariel created the first centralized state in the region of North Asia. First Khaganate would collapse under the pressure of the Golden Horde in 1242. A rump Khazaria would remain governing Atil and Northern Caucasus for 158 years until Isaac the Liberator would go on to stage a massive revolt against the then weakened Horde and restoring Khazaria. The Khazars would re-establish their empire, going further into Central Asia, reaching as far east as China and breaking the power of the Mongol remnants and various Turkic warlords. Thousands of Jews banished from Western Europe would travel to the New Israel, where they would greatly contribute to the enrichment of the Second Khaganate. Judaism would spread into Central Asia due to these conflicts, which would lead to clashes with the Muslims in the region. So in 100 to 800 AD, Khazarians developed into a nation ruled by an evil king who had ancient Babylonian black arts cult of oligarchic serving as his court. During this time, Khazarians became known to surrounding countries as thieves, murderers, road bandits, and for assuming the identities of those travelers they murdered as a normal occupational practice and way of life. And they're still assuming false identities. So in 1200 AD, the Russians that led a group of nations surrounding Khazaria and invaded it in order to stop the Khazarian crimes against their people, which included the kidnapping of their young children and infants for the blood sacrifice ceremonies to Baal. The Khazarian king and his inner court of criminal and murderers came to be known as the Khazarian mafia by neighboring countries. The Khazarian leaders had a well-developed spy network through which they obtained prior warning and escaped from Khazaria to European nations to the west, taking the vast fortune with them in gold and silver. They laid low and regrouped while assuming new identities. In secret, they continued their satanic child blood and sacrificial rituals and trusted Baal to give them the whole world and all its riches as they claimed he had promised them, as long as they kept bleeding out and sacrificing children and infants for him. This is called blood libel. The Khazarian king and his court mafia plotted eternal revenge against the Russians and surrounding nations and invaded Khazaria and drove them from power. The Khazarian mafia invaded England after being expelled for hundreds of years. To accomplish their invasion, they hired Oliver Cromwell to murder King Charles I and make England safe for banking again. So the Khazarian Empire was pushed out to Europe by the Russians and surrounding people who had had enough of them. So Magogites was a nation of people identified as Scythians or Tartars by the Greeks. Later on, other tribes such as Slavs or Mongols, the Finns, the Hungarians or Magyars, and the Pamiris are said to have come from him. All the Goths, including the Swedes, declared that they too descended from the Magogites. Irish Celts also claim that they are the descendants of Japheth, through Magog, although others suggest they are descendants of Gomer. Magogites and Scythians. Scythia was a nation that used to be the north of the Black Sea, in the middle of the Caucasus and Mesopotamia from the years 630 to 600 BC. They were known for their bow and for their battling, mainly on horseback. The two qualities also seen by the early Magogites. Scythians were identified as merciless people, awfully brutal and barbaric to the nations they invaded. Now, at that time in 630 to 600, the Scythians were north of the Black Sea, but they had come from further north. That was where they had migrated to. They were migrating people. If you look at the Mongolians, they live in tents. They don't necessarily stay in one place, or they didn't stay in one place, and they are nomadic to a sense, seasonally nomadic. In the succeeding history about the Ashkenaz, the people closely recognized as the ancestors of the Scythians, it states that the Magogites were just a portion of the Scythian nation who also mixed with the Ashkenaz tribe. Magogites were long exiled and replaced by other groups of people in the prehistoric land of Scythia. The tribe has now been traced and is seen to have travelled around the world. So, the Bible in Genesis is saying that Japheth had 7 sons, but the people that come with the dragon aren't the 7 sons, it's just the Magog. So it's the tribes descended from Magog, Japheth's second son. Gog and Magog Ezekiel described Gog from Magog as a figure of evil darkness from the north and the enemies of God, whereas in Revelation it was written that Gog and Magog were 2 nations that allied together to destroy Christ and his people in the final battle. The Jews also changed the phrase Gog from Magog to Gog and Magog. So it's Gog from Magog, the 2 great opponents of God that should be wiped out in the final battle. That's with the dragon as well. Let's not forget the dragon, who I believe is Idumea. When the time arrives that Satan is freed from his prison, he will trick the people on earth. Magog united with Gog, and under the power Satan rallied against Christ and his saints in Jerusalem. Thus, Gog and Magog were seen as the 2 entities under the influence of Satan who gathered the people to rebel and battle against God. So this pyramid chart here is showing the levels of the secret societies and who's ruling them. I'm not sure on all of the accuracy of these, but basically here we have the Grey Jesuit Council, Arcana Arcanorum. And basically they're saying that they're Ptolemaic papal bloodlines. And yes, they did interbreed with the Ptolemaic families. But if you look at the genealogy, the Ptolemaic families, for example, Cleopatra, who's the most famous, married Mark Antony. She had lots of children. I think it's 5 or 7 children. Some to Mark Antony. I think she had some children to Julius Caesar and another partner. And they intermarried with this Pergamon, Anatolian-based Herod line. And so it's a mixture of these groups. The Armenian family line, who was a branch of all of these families, as well as the Parthian family, this family line was intermarried with the Ptolemaic bloodlines. So what we have here is a combination of these ancient family lines that's been intermarried with this dragon line, red Idumean dragon. We have the Orsini, Aldobrandi family, Breakspear, Somaglia, Farnese. These were all popes. They had all their family members on the throne of the Pope, which is just a royal throne like any other. And these people are the dragon. They are Idumean Jewish converts from the time of the Roman Empire. These people are not Idumean, although they have probably intermarried with Idumean people. These people are descendants of Magog, son of Japheth. These are Turkic origin people, and if you look at the mummies from this area, they weren't Asian looking. They have intermarried with different racial and ethnic backgrounds, so they look different, but they're all the same origin of the same people. This Central Asian steppe people are Turkic in origin, and so are the Turkish people of today. They just look more Middle Eastern than Asian or white, I guess. So let's not get confused about the ethnic backgrounds, because it's what I'm pointing out is I'm pointing out a tribe of people who originated from the son of Japheth, Magog. And so we have the dragon, the red dragon of Idumean ancient family bloodlines through the Roman Empire, through the Herod family that intermarried and interbred into the Roman aristocracy and the Ptolemaic aristocracy. The lines come from the Seleucid families, the Roman aristocracy, and the Armenian royal line. But mainly it was Herod. Once they married into the families they wanted, they intermarried to their own and stayed within their own families. And then we have Gog Magog, the Ashkenazi converts from the Silk Road, who are rising again through this ancient Silk Road route, which is rising from the ashes, the phoenix, coming back via these Central Asian ghost occult cities and nations. People of Magog, or the Magogites, were said to be a great and powerful nation that lived in extreme recesses of the north. Historians stated that the people of Magog were the Greeks called Scythians. The Scythian dwelt in the north of the Black Sea and the Caucasus Mountains in the area now belonging to Russia. Magogites were forced out from Anatolia in 584 BC and went back to the north of the Caucasus. So they went back there. They were not originally from Anatolia. They had moved into Anatolia and northern Iran. So this is a map showing the Caucasus Mountains. So they're in northern Armenia. And we have up here the Ukraine, Kiev, all these Stan countries along here. Russia's up here. So northern Russia up here is the people from these Scandinavian countries. Central Asia and Russia is all the Turkic descending peoples. The Scythians were in the Caucasus Mountains. The Turkic people or tribes are said to have originated in the Altai Mountains, which I guess if you cross the Caucasus Mountains, and they spread right across from Mongolia all the way through northern China and all these Stan countries here, Central Asia. Tibet are said to be, the Tibetan people are descendants from the Turkic people. Right through here. Tartaria, Mongolia. Yep, these are the same people. Grand Tartaria. It is the Turkic, Mongol, Ashkenazi, Khazars, Scythians. The Tartary people are the descendants of Magog, son of Japheth. Syrians declared Magog as another term referring Asiatic Turkey, while the Arabians connected it to the area in the middle of the Caspian and Euxine. And where are the Magogites today? It is said they ended up in southern Russia. Scythians are a large percentage of the population in Russia today. So it says that the Confederation was eventually incorporated into the Mongol Empire when Genghis Khan unified the various steppe tribes. Historically, the term Tartars was applied to anyone originating from the vast northern and central Asian landmass, then known as Tartary, a term which was also conflated with the Mongol Empire itself. More recently, however, the term has come to refer more narrowly to related ethnic groups who refer to themselves as Tartars or who speak languages that are commonly referred to as Tartar. The largest groups amongst the Tartars by far are the Volga Tatars, native to the Volga-Ural region, who for this reason are often also known as Tatars in Russian. They compose 53% of the population in Tatarstan. Their language is known as the Tatar language. As of 2010, there were an estimated 5.3 million ethnic Tatars in Russia. So do I think that these people from these regions are going to form an army and come against the people of God? No, I don't. I think that the descendants of these people, who today are the global bankers, created a philosophy, a political belief called communism that has come against all the saints of God, as they did in Russia. They killed all the Christians, millions of them. They are coming for us now, and they are trying to resurrect their Tartarian Empire in Central Asia. And this has got a lot to do with the Ukraine war, but also this Tartarian fascination that's online at the moment. Do I believe that we have a lost and stolen history? Yes, I do. I think that what we know of history today has been massively lied about, and people are searching out this information, trying to find out what the actual truth is, because these people who have been in charge of us, this dragon, this Gog Magog, has been lying and hiding the truth. Is there something weird about these ancient cities covered in rubble and mud that look like they've been in the Dresden bombing, to be honest? Yeah, definitely there's something wrong here. Something not being explained. Is this connected to these Chinese ghost cities that are rising up through Central Asia? I believe they are. Why on earth would they build these cities and just leave them empty? I recommend watching the Silk Road documentary with Joanna Lumley. In it showing the old Silk Road and all the cities that are rising up along the new Silk Road as well, spanning from Central Asia all the way across to the Middle East. And a lot of these great big cities that are rising up in Saudi Arabia and all of these ancient countries that were connected to the ancient Silk Road trading. The Belt and Road Initiative, it's spanning from China right across Central Asia, all these Tartarian regions, the ancient Turkic people, trading routes, sustainability times. China's Belt and Road Initiative is changing cities and threatening communities. The ancient Silk Road was a historical network of trade routes stretching from China to Europe. It was established around 2,000 years ago during the Han Dynasty, often considered China's golden age. Now, the Han Chinese were of Turkic origin. In 2013, Chinese President Xi Jinping officially announced China's aspiration to recreate this network. Let me just let you in on a big secret. This is not China's initiative. This is the ruling elite's initiative, and China's their new watchdog getting what they need done, because the rest of our Western nations are now thrown on the scrap heap because they have China. The creation of the New Silk Road involves the massive development of trade routes and infrastructure corridors, including everything from railways, airports, ports, pipelines, industrial parks, and real estate projects to free trade agreements and treaties. It has the potential to reshape the world in political, economic, and cultural terms, and poses important environmental risks. It is also profoundly altering cities across the globe, prioritizing wealth and threatening vulnerable communities. And I think that it's going to change people's lifestyles and ways, and it will just, whoever's in the way of these cities and infrastructure will get squashed. They'll get crushed. The Belt and Road Initiative projects signal the increased role of foreign investment in shaping contemporary cities. Important public infrastructure such as ports is now under Chinese ownership. Yep, and my country's port, my city-state's port, is now leased to the Chinese for 100 years. Or management in the heartland of capital cities. The projects also involve the establishment of special enterprise and economic zones, which provide tax breaks and simplified planning procedures to attract foreign investment. The New Silk Road is changing cities, positioning them as hotspots for wealth, free trade, and luxury. It is not just Chinese influence that is driving these projects in certain direction. It's clear that national governments and private interests in each country are playing their part too. Royal Albert Dock is being positioned as London's third financial district after Canary Wharf and the City of London. The Belt and Road Initiative puts private profits above any other social and spatial consideration. Urban areas become non-place, spaces which look the same without historical reference points or local character. It erases people's histories. There we go. Another great reset. To reinvent urban space as trade corridors and places of entrepreneurship and consumption. It prioritizes a kind of urban development that deepens spatial division and social segregation. Rising inequality. The projects of the New Silk Road have caused problems for vulnerable communities in these cities. In Athens, in London, Chinese investment has led to rising rents, which tend to undermine the security of local people in their homes. This has happened in Australia as well. The price of homes is beyond reach now for young people, even middle-aged people. And it's caused by Chinese investment. Chinese people coming to this country, more than likely receiving Chinese loans to buy property, to invest in business, and push the locals out of their ability to live. Piraeus is becoming an industrial zone incompatible with housing. Local communities and number of scientists have expressed their fears about the release of hazardous waste in areas adjacent to primary schools, homes, and playgrounds. In London, ABP's development is aimed at wealthy investors rather than local residents. So they're planning a new reset, a great reset of our economy, but not only our economy, but the entire image of our world. And I believe that it's going to be based around this Belt and Road project. It's based around the old Silk Road powers, who were the Idumean Edomite traders, the converted Jewish merchants, the Radonites, from who I believe were Idumean converts, and they converted the Khazarian, Scythian Ashkenazis, the whole nation of the Khazarians. Their king forced them to convert to Judaism. I believe they're the Magog, and their power comes from this dragon of the red Idumeans. So through these Ashkenazi descendants of Magog, we have communism, and communism is this government and global system that will be used against the saints who are camped in Sukkot, in their tents, their earthly bodies, like the Israelites were camped in the wilderness, in their tents. And this system will come at us, and it is coming for us. And I don't know why the Christian church keeps preaching the dragon being a spiritual being, Satan. I'm not saying that the serpent in the garden wasn't some kind of spiritual being. I don't know that. I'm still debating that and learning more about it. But every single beast of the Bible, from Daniel and Revelation, is a political power. It is an earthly king, and it is an aristocratic family ruling those empires. We have from Babylon, we have Nebuchadnezzar ruling Babylon. That's a lion. We have in Media Persia, King Cyrus. In Greece, we have Alexander the Great, and then it was split into 4 different regions ruled by 4 different kings. Then in Revelation, we have the beasts of the sea, the beasts of the earth. They've all got crowns, they're all kings, they're all positions of power and politics. And yet we have this dragon that's a spirit that gives them power. And it doesn't make any sense. The dragon is not Satan. It is what Jesus called the Pharisees. They're sons of Cain, sons of their father, the devil. So these people that rule the dragon are the seed of Satan, the sons of Satan, as Jesus was calling the Pharisees. We have the Treaty of Lausanne, which is finishing in 2023, and the Turkish leader who has declared that Turkey will return to a former age. And the Treaty of Lausanne was a 100-year treaty that the Ottoman Empire signed, or Turkey signed at the fall of the Ottoman Empire, to control the Bosphorus Canal that comes through the Black Sea. And it's ironic that all these problems are starting in the Ukraine at this time, when only a matter of perhaps 6 months to a year, Turkey may be taking back its trading route power, one of the most powerful trading regions for sea travel on the earth, really. The Treaty of Lausanne was a peace treaty negotiated during the Lausanne Conference of 1922 to 23. The treaty officially settled the conflict that had originally existed between the Ottoman Empire and the Allied French Republic, British Empire, Kingdom of Italy, Empire of Japan, Kingdom of Greece, and the Kingdom of Romania since the onset of World War I. Armistice of Madania was signed in October 1922. It provided for the Greek-Turkish population exchange and allowed unrestricted civilian passage through the Turkish Straits, but not military. The treaty was ratified by Turkey on the 23rd of August 1923. Okay, so a declaration of amnesty granted immunity for crimes committed between 1914 and 22, notably the Armenian genocide. Historian Hans Lucas Kaiser states, Lausanne tacitly endorsed comprehensive policies of expulsion and extermination of hetero-ethnic and hetero-religious groups. The treaty provided for independence of the Republic of Turkey, but also for the protection of the Greek Orthodox Christian minority in Turkey and the Muslim minority in Greece. Turks have never forgotten the Treaty of Lausanne 11, which caused the reduction of the geography of the modern Turkish state and forcing it to give up large territories that were belonging to it. So it was not strange to be tackled by Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan during regular meetings with the Turkish mayors to send historical and political message to the outside before the inside, with interest of Turkey to get rid of the effect of the convention and the restoration of its rights, which were usurped by the Allies, and Turkey considers also the text of the convention are unfair to its rights. The modern Turkish Republic was founded according to the Treaty of Lausanne in 1923, which concluded with the victorious Allies in the First World War. They are the United Kingdom, Ireland, France, Russia, Italy, Britain. Noting Britain has developed a number of unfair and painful conditions to the rights of the Ottoman Empire, as the abolition of the Caliphate and the exile of Caliph and his family outside of Turkey, and the confiscation of all his assets, and the declaration of a secular state, and to prevent Turkey from oil exploration, and to consider the Bosphorus Strait, which links between the Black Sea and the Marmara Sea, and then to the Mediterranean, as an international corridor that it is not entitled to Turkey to obtain fees from shipping passing through it. By 2023, the period of the treaty ends, which has passed 100 years, and here we understand Erdogan's comments as Turkey will enter a new era and will begin oil exploration and drilling a new channel linking between the two seas, Black and Marmara, as a preparation to start collecting fees from passing ships. Hence, one can understand some aspects of the ongoing dispute now between Turkey and the West. Tartar became a name for the populations of the former Golden Horde in Europe, such as those of the former Khazarian, Crimean, Astrakhan, Khwarizm, and Siberian Khanates. The form Tartar has its origins in either Latin or French, coming to Western Europe languages from Turkish and the Persian language. From the beginning, the extra R was present in the Western forms, and according to Oxford English Dictionary, this was most likely due to an association with Tartarus from the Bible, Tartarus. And isn't this where the dragon is chained also, the abyss? So perhaps the Idumean families, noble black nobility families, were chained in the Tartarian nations. So again, languages. The 11th century Kara Khanid scholar Muhammad al-Kashgari noted that the historical Tatars were bilingual, speaking Turkic besides their own language. The modern Tatar language, together with the Bashkir language, forms the, I can't say this word, Kypchak, Bulgar, also Uralo-Caspian group within the Kypchak languages, also known as Northwestern Turkic. So when we're researching the mud flood and we are looking at this Tartarian Empire as possibly our own empire of our ancestry, or that somehow it was stolen or robbed of us, I don't believe that this Tartarian Empire was the kingdom that has been lied about or stolen or hidden. I think what they've done is they've walked in and they've taken it and they've claimed it as their own and deceived us out of our inheritance. They're still doing this via banking, and if we look at this Klaus Schwab Great Reset, we will own nothing and we'll be happy. So gradually they've just taken back more, and now they want us to have nothing. I've been looking into the timeline of Revelation, and I believe that the book of Revelation seems to, or appears to be, broken up into three main periods. So we have the early church period of the apostles, where they go out and they preach the word to the remnant left in the nations. And that's before the fall of Jerusalem and the burning of Rome. which seemed to be tied in perhaps in 70 AD. And then we have this beast age where the beasts gain power and deceive the people. The first period incorporates the seven seals and the horsemen of the apocalypse. Then we have this beast age where the beasts deceive and take control of the nations, and by the end of this we have a great earthquake after the whore is burnt and the beasts are thrown into the abyss or the lake of fire. And then the third period, after the beasts are taken away, the third period is the millennial reign. So we have a 1,000-year millennial reign where people live with the King, Jesus, and the saints. And at the end of the millennial reign, we have the little season of Satan. Satan deceives the nations and brings the armies of Gog Magog against the remaining camp of the saints. And I'm going to do my next video about interpreting these three periods of revelation. I'd just like to also say that the people in each period are still like us. They don't have their resurrection bodies yet. I believe the 144,000 resurrected saints have their resurrection bodies in the first period when the saints were resurrected in Matthew 27 with Jesus. They were resurrected with their new bodies, their spiritual bodies, but at each end of each period there seems to be a reset of the earth because it's finished with great earthquakes and different events from the seals and trumpets. The period I believe we're in now is that of the little season of Satan. So at the end of our period, what will happen is that this Gog Magog army and the dragon will come for us. The people of the nations who don't want to join in with their empire, and that's when Christ returns for the final time and the second resurrection happens, and this is when everything is made new, the new heavens and the new earth. So this is what we have to look forward to. As a child, my mum would always get these Jehovah's Witness Watchtower books, and the pictures in them always had the millennial kingdom with children sitting with asps. I always used to remember the snakes and the lambs and the lions and everybody sitting together. And sometimes I think this is the way a lot of people envision the millennial kingdom and the 1,000-year reign. That somehow it's different than now and we are living eternally after the events of Revelation. But I think we're looking at it in the wrong way. I think what has happened is in this millennial reign period is a period where we have been free to live with the knowledge of God and with the help of the resurrected saints possibly, and people have prospered and the kingdoms of the earth have prospered. We have been able to do that without our resurrection bodies. And people have married and been given in marriage in this time, and children have been born, and it just, humanity's gone on as it always has, in a sense. And at the end of these resets, whoever was left at the end of them, whether it be a third of people, not everybody is destroyed in these events, and that's the remnant of humanity that's been allowed to go on, and perhaps that we are ancestors of. And we've forgotten this information through time, and through the dragon being unchained, it's deceived everybody who's left from these events to believe its lie. In Daniel 7 verse 25, we have Daniel talking about the little horn, who I believe is King Herod, that little horn that comes up amongst the Roman Empire. And later in Revelation is depicted as the dragon. Daniel 7:25, he shall speak words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and shall think to change the times and the law. And they shall be given into his hand for a time, times, and half a time. As I've shown, this Idumean family, this Herod's interbred with the Roman aristocracy and the families of the region, and if this dragon has been released, is being able to give power to the beasts, then these beasts have been able to change times and laws and deceive the nations. They've changed our history. They've changed our system. And let's not believe that the amazing things that were part of our culture came from a nomadic Tartarian tribe that has shown no evidence of building these buildings in their own empire, but lots of evidence of thieving ours and our accomplishments. Just as in the prophecy of Esau, Isaac told Esau that your dwelling will be away from the earth's richness, away from the dew of heaven above. You will live by the sword, and you will serve your brother, and when you grow restless, you will throw his yoke from your neck. And I believe that this is what's happened, is that the blessing of the people of Jacob reap richness from the earth and the dew of heaven, and this people of Esau do not. But they've thrown the yoke from their neck, and they're here to claim what Jacob has built. At some point, these beasts and this dragon has changed our history, and in the next video, I'm going to try to investigate that. I'm just new to the mud flood information, so I'm starting to look at this with different eyes. But I have for a long time now believed that we are in the little season of Satan, and my investigation into this and the dragon and who the dragon is has opened up a lot of this information, and I think it's being revealed to all of us at this time that we know the truth. So we're going to leave it there. I hope you enjoyed. See you in the next video.